currently being serenaded by the sounds of my roommate getting oral sex. What's the most uncomfortable situation you've had forced upon you? When I was 6 I had to watch my friend's parents fistfight one another during a sleepover I was invited to. The dad ended up knocking the mom to the floor and forcing the 4 of us young kids outside while he beat her. Definitely the most uncomfortable post, not to mention terrifying. Went to a costume party as Beast. A female friend went as Belle, Beauty and the Beast. Had fun, played games, got drunk, fell asleep on the couch, woke up to Belle loudly hooking up with Abraham Lincoln on the couch next to me. We made eye contact. The worst part is, I felt like I should be P if only to stay in character. My college dorm room had one of those loft bed setups. Anyways, I'm underneath my roommate's bed on the couch, studying, when my roommate and his girlfriend stumble in, drunk from a night of partying and climb up the ladder to the bed. After a while, the bed springs begin squeaking and the moaning begins, which wouldn't have been so bad if it weren't for the pair of bloody panties that came flying off the bed onto the floor below. It was time to leave. Bloody panties is a scary term. If it was bloody knickers we'd know it was a pom or an Aussie. Bloody panties means a yank got his red wings. You don't last very long and she's obviously practiced that on dozens of people. What the frick, dude? Hey, if you're going to put on a freaking performance you should expect criticism. Your good friend. When I was about 16 we had hot tub on our deck just on the other side of the bathroom window. I'd fallen asleep to be woken by parents coming home after a night of drinking. As I went to the bathroom to pee I heard sloshing and fricking and moaning less than 5 feet away through an open window. I don't think any of these stories will be able to top hearing your parents. Brutal. My first roommate decided he was going to have a gay orgy in our room while I was studying. I was on the top bunk writing a term paper, listening to my iPod. He came in with a few of his friends and sat down on his bed. I had my headphones in so I couldn't hear anything that was going on. About an hour later my bunk started rocking back and forth. I had the mirror on his dresser to see him getting nailed by one guy whilst giving head to another. I slowly got out of my bed with my back to them and walked out of the room. As soon as the door was closed behind me I started laughing hysterically and went to my girlfriend's dorm room for the night. And that is how I found out my first roommate was gay. My freshman year of college I was outside of the dorm talking on the phone. I was just wandering around and I turned and immediately confronted by 2 friends going at it in their first floor room. Window wide open. At that moment the guy notices me and gets all wide-eyed and stops. I quickly turn around and walk away while shouting close the blinds next time Cameron. You're on the first freaking floor. Teased them about it for the next couple years. This would have been a great time to try the Houdini. Not sure why this thread is only hearing people having sex. I've never experienced anything more uncomfortable than going to a friend's house and seeing their parents yell at them. Same here. My mind was blown when I saw the comment further up when a kid's parents kicked all his friends out so they could have a fist fight. This is an awkward turned awesome story. I used to live with 2 other girls in this huge old house. One night, late, almost 5 AM, I awake to hear our roommate screaming in the living room. Not fun sexy screams, terrified panic screams. So my other roommate and I were upstairs texting each other from our rooms trying to figure out if we should call 911. We finally realize she's having some loud weird crazy sex all over our house. As it turns out, the guy she was banging owns this really awesome local bar. This was 7 years ago and I still get free drinks and he books all my friends' bands. Not a bad trade for a few sleepless nights. TLDR. Roommate used to loudly bang the owner of a really cool bar who now hooks me up. He wants to have loud weird crazy sex with you, like he did with your roommate. I was drinking with a few friends and the night was getting late so I'll let them stay over. As the night died down we relax and watch a movie. About 20 minutes and 2 of my friends start going at it like rabbits. Guy and girl, under a blanket no more than 8 inches away from me. At this point I'm just thinking what the frick. Do I ask them to stop? Wait for them to finish? Feign sleep? I can't really go anywhere because it's my room. I'm drunk and it was cold as heck outside. Already kinda awkward considering 2 people having sex beside me, but it gets worse when the girl tried to hold my hand mid-coitus. And to add insult to injury, I had a huge crush on the girl and she knew it. I once had not one, but 2 German girls being butt fricked against the wall on the room next to mine at 4 in the morning. My very limited German allowed me to understand that there was butt sex going on, and that they were really enjoying it. Having to see the guys the next day was totally awkward. I was 15. Stayed at a youth hostel in Miami. Shared a room with a few Aussies, one of whom put a towel over his face and started masturbating at about 8 in the morning. He had complained about having blue balls while trying to score with a girl who, in his words, looked like Gonzo from the Muppets. Staying at a friend's place after a drunken party while they scream at each other for 4 solid hours and then break up. I drove 3 hours for a party an old college friend and his girlfriend were throwing. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I wasn't into attending in the first place. When I got there was the one other friend from college who had begged me to show up, the couple I knew, and a collection of white trash about 10 years our junior. One was a raging racist, who I just argued with all night, and we almost ended up in a fist fight. So, finally about 3 AM, the night is winding down, and I'm talking to the host's girlfriend, who I've known since her freshman year in college. It started with small talk, but it didn't take long before she broke into tears explaining that she wasn't happy. A few minutes later the host comes down and says, "Hey, are you going to get in here and frick me, or just sit down here crying all night?" Seriously, he was that much of an butthole. They start screaming at each other, and I'm just stuck there, on the couch, between them. Soon they're standing, but I'm still sitting, and they're sort of arguing and fighting over me. Every once in a while one of them will try to include me in the fight. "Bishop thinks your friends are buttholes too, don't you?" And he would say, "She's just down here trying to frick you, wasn't she?" After a half hour, I just decided to pretend I was sleeping. After an hour I had to get up and take a pee, and they hadn't even stopped screaming. After another hour I stopped pretending I was sleeping, but just sat on the couch watching them. Seriously, it was excruciating. I love your defense. Falling asleep mid-argument. Regularly hear my upstairs neighbors trying to drill their way into my apartment using only the power of their pelvis. Considering asking them to scream names during sex so I can cheerlead for them while they do it. I'm not sure what the layout is in my neighbor's condo, so I don't know if our bedrooms share a wall and if that wall is thick or not. I do know when it's the middle of the day and he's vacuuming and I don't have the TV on or my laptop on, I can hear the vacuum, so I'm pretty sure my neighbor knows my name, even though we've never met in person. I'm really thinking of investing in a ball gag. I came home one night to the sounds of my roommate having sex with her boyfriend. They were kind of loud, so as they heard my footfalls they got really quiet. As I approached the door I called out, "Hey guys, how's your night going?" They laugh and reply, "Good. How's yours?" "Not as good as yours." "Have fun. At least someone's getting laid tonight." Then they return to their noise making. It was my own personal Avenue Q moment. I find this kind of awesome, rather than awkward. Needed a ride into town from the dorms I was living in, so I asked my quadmates for a lift when they went. They said sure. This was about a week into the semester. We hit it off well, but I didn't really know them. We get into town and pull up behind a gas station. Eventually a rather shady looking man on a motorcycle shows up and walks up to our car. He asks who I am and my quadmate says I'm cool. Quadmate then buys a rather large quantity of M. Turns out he was a dealer and the guy he was buying from was a tear up from him. Quite uncomfortable. Sounds like M is the awkward drug of choice. I used to live with my ex-boyfriend and his mother and siblings. Our room was right below mom's. She often brought home guys from the bar, but one night was especially loud. You could hear her bed scraping across the wooden floor above, on top of her own vocals, mixed with her male friend's grunts. As if waking up to that at 3 in the morning wasn't awkward enough, when I got up at 8 AM, I was greeted by her guest in the kitchen, who was probably only a year or two older than me, wearing her silky robe. He told me he was a MMA fighter and offered to make me eggs. I don't think I even responded. I was so painfully uncomfortable in that moment. Sounds like he was trying to use his MMA and egg prowess to get some mornings strange. Listening to my gay roommate get his butt pounded as I walked by the room to get some water before bed. His moans mixed with the slapping of nuts on butt is something that I can't erase from my mind's eye. Had a gay roommate with a live-in boyfriend for a while. Heard this almost every single night for months. Eventually it became sort of soothing. Was gonna reply with that time my brother and his girlfriend were having loud shower sex. Start reading replies. Nope, not gonna win this one. There is always the story of when you heard your parents going at it in the shower. Oh wait, not your parents, but mine. I cannot get the sounds out of my mind. I mean, I shower there. It is supposed to be a clean place. I was just getting off work during shift change, and one of the brand new co-workers, who I didn't know at all, came in and said he couldn't work because his only son just died from an OD. He had to walk to work to tell our manager because he didn't have a phone or car. Well, lucky for me I was the only one still lingering from shift change, so my manager told me to take him home. He lived about 5 miles away, and with 5 o'clock traffic it took me about 15 minutes. 15 minutes of awkward banter, and a fully grown man crying intermittently. While I felt bad for him, it was still extremely awkward. However, I did leave him with some positive advice. Well, the grass is always greener on the other side. To this day I still don't know why that seemed like good advice to a guy whose kid just died. However, I did leave him with some positive advice. Well, the grass is always greener on the other side. Jesus. This sounds like something Michael Scott would say. Back in the late 80s I shared an apartment with a guy named Josh, who was an awesome roommate who was attending the Culinary Arts Institute and was an awesome chef. He was bisexual but didn't really ever bring guys home. Always kept that part of his life separate. Anyway, fast forward to his graduating weekend. He comes home drunk as all heck. And as I laid in my bed I can hear him just anally punishing this guy for a good couple of hours, and all turns quiet for the night. Next morning he and his friend were trading oral sex and Josh finishes by commanding that his partner swallow all of it like he promised, and I almost thought the other guy was whimpering a bit. About an hour later Josh was walking his overnight guest to the door and I literally dropped my coffee mug on the floor as I saw his guest was my sister's boyfriend of 3 years, and I couldn't even begin to wonder how he felt as he looked like he was gonna cry when he recognized me. Dude, talk about skeletons in a closet. Not as crazy as some of these, but I was over my friend's house with a couple other buddies and we were blasting Hollywood Undead. His sister yelled from upstairs to turn it the frick down. My friend told her to shut up. We told him to just lower it, but he insisted to go upstairs and knock her the frick out. 8 minutes later, after hearing swings and tables flipping and vases shattering, his sister, 14, while he's 17, come downstairs and dump his unconscious body in front of us. Your friend's 14-year-old sister was more of a badass than any of you. Respect. Dated a girl for a few weeks. Didn't work out. No hard feelings. Fast forward a few months later, at a friend's house party with a date. There's a couple in the bathroom and they're being very amorous. The walls are paper thin and even with music turned up it's pretty obvious. We're all joking about who's in the room and debating if we ought to interrupt when a female voice starts screaming out my name. Kind of froze. Looked at my date who had an arched eyebrow, then looked at everyone else who had similarly froze and gave me similar looks. The pelvic pounding ceased almost immediately, replaced with some furious cursing, and the ex comes strolling out in a t-shirt and panties, holding her shorts. Gives me a look, smiles, shrugs and leaves, something my date noticed. Her companion comes shuffling out, still yelling, and follows her out. A minute of uncomfortable silence later, my date leaned in and whispered, "So, care to explain?" My mind goes blank and I'm not sure how to reply in a coherent manner. Still whispering, she says, "Well, plan on making it as memorable for me." I just nod, not really sure what's going on. She takes my hand, and we head back to her place for some delicious sexy time. TLDR. Ran into my ex at a house party where she had sex with someone, screamed my name and inadvertently piqued the interest of my date, which got me laid. Feel like that is GGG of an ex-girlfriend. LOL. Ruined her relationship to bolster yours. I was in bed with my girlfriend in college and we were almost asleep when her roommate, drunk, brought a random guy she had met back to the room. The beds were only 3 feet or so apart, but we pretended to be asleep. That turned out to be a huge mistake. We laid there motionless for probably an hour as the guy utterly and repeatedly failed to perform, and the roommate said things like, "That's the best you can do." I don't think I've been simultaneously embarrassed, sympathetic, disgusted, and uncomfortable before or since. In his defense, a girl being callous enough to say something like that is a huge turn off. Don't think I would have been able to get it up for that B either. Not the most awkward, but my English professor caught me drinking with her son, who I didn't know was in high school, in her basement. "Hey, let's go drink in my parents' basement." "No, I'm not in high school." Unfortunately, I have 2 stories. The first one was when I was 18 and I went with a buddy to visit my female cousin at her college. They had dated before but were broken up. We stayed in her room and I was awakened around 3 in the morning to slurping and moaning sounds. I guess my cousin was not a swallower because she made a joke about needing a spittoon next to her bed. To this day my buddy still refuses to admit that he ever had sex with my cousin. Second story was from when I was in college. I was sleeping on the top bunk when my redneck roommate, who was quitting college the next day, came in with a drunk girl and woke me up. I got to feel the bed shaking, her screaming "oh god," all about how she had a boyfriend already, and then she threw up. Being a nice guy and my roommate being a dong, I was comforting her as she was dry heaving. When he left the room to clean the vomit off, the bastard left the next day and the room stank for a week no matter how much cleaner I sprayed on the floor. I go to sleep at 1 AM one Saturday night of freshman year of college. I know, lame, right? And my roommate brings home a girl around 2. Since we're in the freshman dorms, our beds are lofted, and therefore not good for sexy times. However, we did have a pull-out couch. I wake up to both the sounds and the motions of people banging under me. I was horrified. I kept completely still for a solid hour, and when it was over, the girl asked my roommate what my name was, and kept trying to wake me to apologize. At this point, I was feigning sleep. Ugh. My biggest regret is not reaching down and slapping her butt. The moral of the story is to always discuss sexy time with new roommates. I'd either been happy to move to the dorm's group room, or a friend's room if he had just asked. Till double contractions I'd either. I've got 2 I love to talk about. 1. I was in college spending the night with my girlfriend. Her roommate was usually very cool, and we respected her being in the room. So, my girlfriend and I are falling asleep when she comes in with a random guy. We can hear they are both a little intoxicated, and are making out. We hear them crash onto the bed. It sounds gain in intensity. Then things slow down, and there's lots of whispering. Then I get hit with a smell. I'll never forget it. It wasn't even a smell. It was like someone had replaced the very air I was breathing with pungent chunks of cotton. My girlfriend grabbed my arm and told me not say a freaking word. I was going to puke. Any hard-on I had achieved died and crawled back into my belly. Her roommate had anal sex and left the room smelling like I crawled way up her butt and made it my home. She apologized the next day and left the windows open. But even to this day, 15 years later, when I happen to see her, I still think of her as the crap queen. 2. I have a very white name, and I'm 3/4 Asian. I was in Hawaii for work. At the time I did server OS repair and got a sweet trip out for a few days. I show up at the building I'm to do work in, check in with the guard and wait for the manager to come up and collect me so I can start work. The guard tells me it'll be a few minutes, and I say fine, sit down, and start reading a book. About 30 minutes later I ask, and he calls, and says the same thing. I hit the 4-hour mark and I'm seriously wondering if I can justify charging the wait time when I see an Asian Hawaiian guy open a door, glance around, and walk up to the guard. I jump up so I can get closer to listen. He's asking about a white guy. I speak up and say hi, I'm Quantum Pencil. He looks at me and starts apologizing profusely. He had been looking into the lobby for a white guy, and yes, I got paid to read a Tom Clancy novel for 4 hours. I'm really struggling to think of a name so white that nobody would even wonder if you weren't white. The closest I'm getting is Chad with a Bottoms Jr. Friend was doing M in the same room as me, offered me some. I declined and went home. Was uncomfortable because he kept going about how Barack Obama is in cahoots with the Jews. Not a fun night. Those sneaky Jews. A couple weeks ago, I was attempting to take a nap in my lofted bed. Underneath me, my roommate was laying in bed with her boyfriend. The springs started squeaking for a solid 20 minutes as I was helpless to do anything about it. After they were done, he said, "I can't believe your roommate is still asleep." To which I responded, "I'm not. I've been awake for a while." It's Christmas morning, 2 or 3 am. I, being 9 years old, couldn't sleep and was very excited to open presents, but slyly, I snuck down the stairs, being as quiet as possible so as not to startle Santa and perhaps catch the jolly old fellow in the act. As I neared the tree, I could make out a distorted human-like figure amidst the stacks of neatly wrapped presents. Turns out it's my mom and my stepdad, who is dressed as Santa doing the dirty. I stuck air up just long enough to make eye contact with my mom. This is my worst memory. TLDR, I saw mommy fricking Santa Claus. At least she wasn't kissing Santa Claus. Once I was stuck in the back of a 1970s Volkswagen Beetle with a 54-year-old Scottish homosexual addict going through withdrawals. The driver of the car was the guy who played Seamus Finnegan in the Harry Potter movies, and he was blasting Nordic death metal. I don't remember this scene from Trainspotting. When I was 16, I went to my friend's house where he invited over a few girls. It came toward the end of the night, and my friend was with a girl. I had to share the same room as him. He was audibly playing around with her and had earlier put on some music. I was trying to get to sleep and just ignored it because I knew that if they knew I was still awake they'd be embarrassed and she'd possibly want to stop. So I shut up. Anyway, something happened with the iPod and it somehow got stuck on one terrible freaking song that I never want to hear again. It was the Matrix theme song. Don't freaking ask me how it got there. It was stuck on repeat for over an hour, and I guess they zoned out the song because they were doing the dirty. I, however, went into the deep depths of heck in my mind, and became a silent maniac for the period. I couldn't get up to change the song, but I couldn't get to sleep. I don't think I ever recovered. Story time. I did a summer internship in a Midwestern city between my junior and senior year in college. While there I met a super cute girl and hit it off. By the end of the summer we were getting very handsy, but I had to head back to college for my last year. I graduate and I'm heading to a graduate school in a different Midwestern city. While driving to graduate school, though, I would swing through and meet up with this girl again. I tell her and she sounds very excited about meeting up again. So I drive to her place and we hang out for the day, but something is off. After a dinner she says she doesn't want to get physical while I'm in town. Dejected, confused, I say okay and ask if I can crash on her couch and she says that's fine. So after a movie at her house I go to sleep on her couch. Around 2 in the morning I have the fun of meeting one of her roommates by her stumbling and tripping onto the couch me and waking me up, and then, with her boyfriend, heading to her bedroom in the next room. At this point they start having loud sloppy drunk sex that most likely would not have woken me up except for the whole falling onto me bit. This I listen to for an hour and they stop, so I take this as the time to fall back to sleep. Except she come out and freaking shakes me to apologize for being loud, then goes back to her room and goes at it for another hour. So after breakfast with a girl I knew I got the frick out of there and back on the road. TLDR. Failed to score with a girl. Listened to her roommate score twice. Dude, if she woke you up to apologize for being so loud, and went back and had more sex because she was still frisky, the waking up part was your cue to ask to join in. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.